And welcome to everyone coming into our Zoomversation, or our Zoominar about coupling in quarantine. These have been talks from the Forward Focus, where we talk to brilliant Jewish leaders about life in this uncanny new existence. I'm Abby Sher. I'm one of the writers for the Forward's advice column, the Bintel Brief. And if you don't know, the Bintel Brief started in 1906, and we have been reinventing it for the digital age. So please write into Dear Abbies at forward.com for all of your questions. I can't promise to answer your questions, but I will definitely commiserate with them. And I write it with another wonderful Abby named Abby Rasminsky. So please look up Dear Abbies at Forward. Okay, so today, in honor of springtime and love being in the air, or something being in the air, we are diving into the fascinating topic that all of us have to grapple with in some way, which is relationships. We're going to talk about what feels good in our relationships, what we need from our relationships, how our relationships are adapting or stalling out because of this new normal. We've got experts on dating, coupling, feeling stuck with our dearest loved ones in very cramped spaces, trying to hook up virtually, 6 feet away necking, which I wonder if there is such a thing. We might find out. I would like to introduce our esteemed panel. We have guests from all over the country today to discuss relationships in the time of Corona. We have David Yarus, the founder of JSwipe, the world's largest Jewish dating app. And David, just to verify, J stands for Jewish, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Just making sure. Okay. We have Rayna Greenberg, who is a dating expert and co-host of another wildly popular podcast called Girls Gotta Eat. And
hi.
Hello. We have Lindsey Metselaar, host of the very popular podcast We Met At Acme.
Hi, thanks for me. Sorry, my dog is barking. Hopefully he'll stop.
What's your dog's name so we can introduce your dog?
Riley.
Riley. Okay. Hi, Riley. We have Rabbi Richard Steinberg, who is a senior rabbi at Congregation Shir Ha Ma'alot, as well as a licensed marriage family therapist specializing in couples counseling.
Hey everybody, great to be here.
And Rabbi Richard is representing from the West Coast, so we have to give him some kudos for getting. And we have Jared Matthew Weiss, the founder of Touchpoint, which is a virtual town hall about love, sex, and relationships, where people from all over the world share stories live from their living rooms. Who would have thunk? Why would we be doing things live from our living rooms? Okay, so I want to give everybody a few housekeeping rules. When you have a question for one of the awesome panelists, or you want me to ask it, please put it in the question answer section down below. I'm pointing at it as if you can see me pointing, but that's not very helpful. There's a button that says Q&A, and then there's one that says chat. But the chat goes pretty quickly, so do it in the Q&A, please. And also, we want to thank Lisa Lepson, who's the Vice President of Development, Roberta Kaplan, the National Director of Major Gifts and Events, Dina Cooperman, Director of Marketing, Gabby Brooks, Development Associate, and Jody Rudoran, Editor-in-Chief at The Forward. And lucky you, since you're here, you get a free month to The Forward. I don't know if any of you know that, but that's Jody's gift to you. Okay, so first question. David, how about we start with you?
Hello.
Should we even be trying to date during quarantine?
Should we even? Well, I don't presume to, report or speak for what I all should or shouldn't be doing. But I think that quarantine is having an impact on everyone in a unique and specific way to them. Some people taking it as a time to really go in and do self-work and think about, what is it like to be, quarantined by themselves at a distance. And it's really, I know, helpful and positive for some in that scenario. It's really scary and, not enjoyable for some. Some people are taking it as an opportunity to have the long tail of conversations and really getting to know someone and building some intimacy before jumping into anything physically because of the distance, which on a friend call that Jared and I had with like a group of friends, someone was saying that this is actually their preferred way of dating, is actually really building that intimacy and having those conversations, up front. So they were really, thriving in this new scenario. So I'd say whatever feels the most fulfilling and true to each is what they should or shouldn't be doing.
Beautiful. I love hearing that people prefer this. I really, I wonder why they would prefer this. Do you have any ideas?
I'd flip it to Jay for that.
All right, so let's flip it to Jay for that. Jared, you talk a lot about human connection in general, and especially how like a community can help people find love. So how can we rely on the community during this strange time when we can't even talk to our community?
When we can't talk to our community?
Or we can't like come together and physically be with our community.
Oh. So I think that, we tend to think that connection is cultivated in shared celebration, which it is. Mm-hmm. But, some of our deepest bonds are really formed in shared struggle. Mm-hmm. And I think that the magic of the moment is this shared struggle. Mm. And so I think that whether we're connecting with people en masse, like at our town hall where there's 500, 600, 700 people there, or we're just connecting one-on-one with a person in a dating app, there is this common ground that has been established that, just generationally speaking, not our generation, our parents, or even our grandparents have ever experienced this level of groundedness. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, and thank God we live in a time where we have things like Zoom and FaceTime and iMessage and WhatsApp and Telegram and so many different channels to be able to connect. And so, I think that right now we have a tremendous opportunity to cultivate bonds that will, romantically and with our friends and with our family, that I don't know if I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity right now for us to be able to really have this common ground and to be able to connect in a big, meaningful way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a silver lining if I ever heard one. Lindsey, I was going to give you an opening question, but somebody just posted a really fascinating one specifically for you. Can Lindsey speak about the upcoming Venus retrograde and how it might pertain to relationships in quarantine?
I sure can, and I would love to. So on my podcast, we talk a little bit about astrology. I'm not an astrologer, but I have done a little bit of research. And when planets go retrograde, it's a time of reflection and kind of taking a step back. So you might have heard, Mercury's in retrograde, which means that our communication is generally off during that time. So you have to be extra careful saving your emails and things like that so you don't lose things. When Venus is in retrograde, Venus is the planet of love. So it can have a direct effect on relationships. But this isn't something that we need to worry about and stress about. It's actually a good thing. It's a time when you have realizations that, hey, maybe this partner isn't serving me right now. Maybe I want to let go of a bad relationship in my life. Maybe exes are coming out of the woodwork to try to talk to me. That could have to do with Venus retrograde. That could also have to do with the fact that everyone's really bored in quarantine. But it's definitely something to be aware of, and just be very heightened about what you're leaning towards, and if you actually want something or someone, or if you want to get back with that ex, or if it's just this momentary Venus retrograde. I don't know exactly what date it comes out of retrograde, but you might want to check that and just see if you have any difference in thought at the time that it leaves.
So what would be if we weren't in a pandemic, what would be your usual advice for Venus retrograde as opposed to now?
I would say to not make any rash decisions. However, if you do realize someone isn't serving you, whether it's Venus retrograde, whatever's going on in the world, that's something that you need to pay attention to. And if someone or something isn't serving you, I think you need to shed that person or that thing. So, listen to your gut.
Okay. Nice. And it's not too harsh to break up with someone during a pandemic?
Definitely not. There's never a good time to break up with someone, pandemic or no pandemic.
Okay. Beautiful. And on the flip side of that, Rayna, how do you keep the spark alive if you're dating and distancing? Let's say you're either in a long distance relationship or it's now long distance because you're 6 feet plus apart.
Yeah, I think that, can you guys hear me? I think that a lot of people are really struggling with this. We're getting a lot of emails into the podcast about this. People that were in a 3-4 month long relationship and now are separated from that person. And I really feel for them because it's really hard to keep that spark alive. Especially for somebody who's not super familiar or comfortable with the notion of maybe like spicing it up via text message or FaceTime and doing things where you can like see each other's bodies and play games and things like that. And I think for most people, it's hard to trust that another person isn't going to screen record you or take screenshots of the things that you say. But I do think that there's ways to just sort of ease yourselves into it. We had a great episode this week with somebody named Dr. Emily Morse, and she had some great advice. It's our episode from 2 days ago or yesterday. And she talked about how you can tell your partner that maybe you want to play a little game. You can play like a little strip poker or something on FaceTime. You can ease into like sexy text messaging, tell me what you would do to me if I was here with you, things like that. If you trust your partner, racy photos, I think are always a great way to just keep the spark alive and remind your partner, like, I am sexy and I'm thinking about you. And I think, again, there's nothing wrong with feeling scared or nervous to do stuff like this. I love it, and I've had long distance relationships, and I think it's really kept the spark alive. And it's just a good way to remind people, like, hey, I'm horny and I'm thinking about you. And I think that we should all be masturbating and having orgasms throughout this always, because it releases all kinds of endorphins into your brain and it gives you a better day anyways. So without getting too raunchy, that's my advice.
Please, we welcome all raunchiness here.
Well, my mom's watching, so.
Oh. And again, I'm putting it in the chat for everybody, but Rayna's podcast is Girls Gotta Eat, and Lindsey's is We Met At Acme. And I would love Rabbi Richard Steinberg to weigh in. I also wanted to mention, Rabbi Rick, you have a book coming out, right?
Not that I know of, but maybe someday.
Oh, did I attribute that? Oh, I'm sorry. That's Jared's book. Jared, you should plug your book, The Magic of Tiny Moments.
Co-authored by Rabbi Rick Steinberg.
You want me to do that now?
Yeah, tell us about your book, and then Rabbi Rick will be the co-author.
Oh, great. I love This Is How Deals Get Done.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so over the last 4 years, I've talked to about 5,000 people about the way love and sex and human connection shows up in their lives. And it's been an incredible journey. And so the book, The Magic of Tiny Moments, is an exploration of how we cultivate human connection in our lives and why it matters. And it's interesting. It'll come out on Audible at the end of the year. And I think it'll come out at the perfect time as we're coming out of a real crisis of connection. And we're going to need to learn how to cultivate better habits of connection in our lives. And so that's what the book is about.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And Rabbi Rick, I'm so glad that you collaborated on this book with him. Is it okay if I call you Rabbi Rick? Is that
Please.
Okay. So we have a lot of questions coming in about how do you keep things going when you're in lockdown together and the stress of being together all the time. And I know you are a licensed marriage counselor, so I would love you to weigh in.
Thanks. This is an existential moment for our entire world in a way that has never happened before. And it's an existential moment for countries, for states, for counties, for cities, and for the home in which you live. And I think the existential question is, who am I? And who do I want to be? And that really relates to not only oneself, but the people with whom you live and are in relationship with. How do you connect with these people? And are you being your best self in those moments? Are you trying hard to reach deep down and be more tolerant? It's the kind of thing where when you're with somebody for a long time, the things that annoy you about that person or upset you about that person sort of grow. It's like a magnifying glass when you're in isolation and they really start to get on your nerves. And I think when we ask ourselves the existential questions, we have to flip that. We have to say, what is it I love most about my partner? What is it that I really admire about them? And try hard to focus on those things. It's much easier said than done. We're all human beings and we're all stressed out and anxious and not sleeping well and dealing maybe with some situational depression. I mean, there's a lot going on at this moment. And I love Jared's point about connection. I mean, and to flip this to say this is a really important moment where we can connect more, just like they're doing on JSwipe and in other ways. So it's a moment to really question ourselves and who we want to be and then strive towards those goals. Again, easier said than done, but there's never been a better time to work on it. Now is the time. Now is absolutely the time to be our best selves and to try to strive for that place. And then that will result in healthier connections. Hopefully your partner feels the same way and you can both work on it at the same time. And if you're in a struggling relationship and if you're in a tough place, then you have to make some priority decisions. I mean, if you have children at home and you're not getting along with your spouse and it's really very tense, you have to be your best self for your children, right? And figure out how to coexist. Or get some help. Talk to somebody. Talk to somebody who can help navigate your tough situation. But these questions, and I think we will know a lot more after quarantine about what all this means than we do in quarantine, about the relationships we have, particularly just as a congregational rabbi, what it means to be part of a community that doesn't gather in person, but gathers now maybe in greater numbers. I mean, I've talked to my parents more every day than I have in my entire adult life. And I'm loving it, actually, really enjoying it. And it's deepened our relationship in ways that I didn't really expect. And with my brothers as well.
Lovely. And just to give you credit where credit's due, you have 6 kids, is that right?
I have 5.
5.
My own and 2 stepkids. So
Oh my goodness.
very happy and healthy and doing well. One was supposed to graduate NYU in 2 weeks and will graduate with the diploma, but not a ceremony, unfortunately. So a lot of people are dealing with disappointment too. So how do we deal with our disappointment? Do we take it out on our partners, or do we just try and wrestle with that within ourselves, or share our pain so that we can hold each other's hearts gently in our hands? And I think there's real opportunities for us to connect and love and virtually connect in all sorts of ways, from the sexy, as Rayna described, to the deeper sort of intellectual and spiritual needs that I think people have, and the combination of the both.
Lovely. And I guess on that note as well, are people finding that there are new ways that people are connecting virtually in terms of like wooing each other? There used to be this thing called the promposal, where You guys know what I'm talking about, where all these kids would get together and make elaborate proposals. Is anybody noticing trends like that?
It's sort of like cooking. It's not a great idea to go to the grocery store every day during quarantine, so you make do with the food that you have. One of the suggestions I had for romance is, you know, it's nice on Shabbat or whenever to go get your spouse flowers. Well, we may not be able to do that, but there are a lot of flowers outside. Just go and clip one off, put it in a little vase, and then present it to your partner. And that effort goes a long way. It's what we call credits in the bank for when the times are difficult, knowing that somebody was thinking of you and really caring about you at that particular moment. Simple, simple gestures.
Also known as tiny moments, I believe.
Beautiful.
I think something that's been really interesting is that for a couple of years, like my life coach, and I think Lindsey tells to people about this also, but suggests like FaceTime first dates, basically before, especially from people you're meeting on apps, but before you get offline with someone and take the time and, you know, block the night and get ready, before you go through all of that, even quick video, call before as like a quick sort of vibe check screener is something that I think I've heard a lot of people talk about in the past, but anytime I suggested it before Corona, I faced some resistance, like, I don't know, like people, it wasn't like, oh yeah, sure. It was more like, is that even an okay ask? And what I'm most curious about is how this experience will it's already had everyone's now familiar with, you know, Zoom Passover, Zoom Shabbat, FaceTime, dates, etc. Lindsey, early on in the quarantine, did some matchmaking where through people who are a part of her community, she set people up, and then you had a FaceTime first date or some type of video call. And I think that for most people, it's their first time doing a video screen before they get offline with someone. And we're going through kind of just like companies being forced to now adopt and adapt to working from home. And at first it's a little funny, but then you maybe kind of like it a little bit. I think we've sort of accelerated people through the adoption curve of let's say, first of all, just things happening differently. But in this specific case, connecting digitally a la video before you get offline and meet someone in person. And what will remain from here. But that's definitely a trend that I've seen. And I think Lindsey could probably tell us about the feedback that she got, because from what I saw, people loved it.
Yeah, I have been doing these setups through quarantine, and just because I realized we all have all this free time. It's such a good opportunity to see if people can match together, and the best way to do that is virtually. And especially right now, but as David was saying, even before now, I had some friends that preferred a FaceTime before meeting up in person. And I really admired that, because that's how you can really see if you have this vibe with someone and this connection, either FaceTime or on the phone. That's when you really can see what your connection is like. Sorry, my dad. But it's really a wonderful thing. And as Rayna had mentioned before, there are things that you can do if you can't meet up with someone. You can kind of go through all the motions when you're virtually dating. You'll meet, you'll connect, you could have a glass of wine together, you can eventually, sext or take it to the next level. But you can kind of go through all those motions virtually without the intimacy factor, which is actually probably a good thing, because you're really getting to know each other's personalities. So I've been doing these setups, and I've had some great feedback, some not so much, because it's hit or miss, but it's a really great way to connect people.
I want to piggyback on what Lindsey said, and I think that she's so great at setting people up. And I think that this is a nice opportunity to actually not have those pressures of, am I going to sleep with this person? When am I going to sleep with this person? I want to leave this date and go sleep with another person. And I one of the overwhelming messages I get from women is when to sleep with a person, or when to be intimate, when to kiss the person. Should they do it first? Is a guy never going to talk to me again if I sleep with him on a third date? And now all of that pressure is sort of out the window. And it's great to be able to smell somebody and touch somebody and kiss them. But I think that we can take this opportunity to say, okay, I don't have these external factors. I don't have to think, am I sitting too close to the person? When are they going to touch me? How are they going to touch me? And really just get to the heart of what somebody is like. And it's a really crazy thing. Hopefully we'll never have to go through this again, but I think it's an interesting opportunity to build an intimacy with someone that we probably never would have built in a different scenario.
I'm glad you mentioned smell. I never think of that, but that's true. If you don't like the smell of someone, then that's going to be a major factor.
I just ask the rabbi a quick question. What's the Jewish take on sexting?
Well, the Talmudic rabbis didn't really tackle that issue so much. But to be sure, intimacy is a huge part of being Jewish. And I think you're talking about something that's so important here. That's sort of the dimensions of an emotional connection with somebody. And I think the ideal is the three-dimensional relationship. And Rayna just described something so interesting, taking out the dimension of smell or worry about when is this person going to hold my hand or touch me. I mean, that's a really important part of a relationship. But perhaps it's secondary to these emotional pieces that we're talking about. And so, the proof will be in months to come to see how this turns out for sure. The three-dimensional piece, though, is really important because I don't know that we totally 100% get to know a person simply via the screen. I think it's hugely important. I love that people are going deep and connecting in these ways. And that human piece is important, but it is qualitatively different than sitting there with somebody and deciding, it's weird. And I don't know if you guys find this certainly on the video stuff and the texting, you are more vulnerable in terms of what you share, but you're not so vulnerable in how you feel. When you're with somebody in person, you feel much more vulnerable and you share a little less. It's like not having that worry about where's this going to go allows you to say whatever you want. And that's good and bad, I suppose, on both. And yet when you're with somebody, you're a little bit more frightened to share. And the feeling is a little stronger. So it will be fascinating to see how this plays out. But the Talmudic rabbis were very pro-intimacy. I don't know their stand on sexting, but they really believed in the text. I don't know so much about the sex, but intimacy they were very much in favor of.
Thank you for answering that. It was, and sorry for asking it, but I just wanted to bring something up on that note, which was on I don't know if it was the first Touchpoint town hall digitally, but I remember Jared was leading a conversation with 500 or 1,000 people from around the world about relationships and being in quarantine. And I believe Lindsey was there as well. And someone said in their story, just some guest was telling their story about this intimacy they were building. And they explained that we met and we had our first kiss via Zoom. And it was just such an interesting, I think it was that stuck out for a lot of people. And it was just so fascinating to be in the era of first kisses through Zoom and just what that means and how that it's wild.
I think that right now dating, looking for connection on apps or using FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, the blessing of this moment is that we've been slowed down. I think that we all, there's 129 people here, and I'm assuming, all of us are seeking love in our lives. And even if we feel like we have it, we'd like it to be deeper, we'd like it to be richer, and we definitely don't want it to end. And because of that, we do tend to try to hit some milestones that we're not ready for, right, pretty early on. So we'll meet somebody on a dating app. I don't know what the minimum criteria is for a lot of us, but often it's okay, I don't think this person's cute. I don't think they're a serial killer. Maybe I'll meet up with them and oh, this is cool. I'm not willing to share this or go there, but maybe we'll go on a few more dates. And we just want to hurry the harvest. You know, we just want to hurry it up. Let's get to those milestones. I want this thing in my life so badly. I want to get to the sex. I want to get to that point where we meet each other's, you know, parents or friends. And I think that what the apps and what the present moment allows us to do is it forces us to slow down, and it forces us to use our words, and it forces us to get to know people in a paradigm in which we can't just rush to have sex. We can't just rush to hit these milestones, and now all we're left with is each other. And that's, I mean, that's a blessing, you know? So I think that embracing the moment and saying, you know, it's like, we're going through a collective trauma. We have an opportunity to slow down, to get to know each other more deeply. You know, the word intimacy has come up in a few different contexts over the last few minutes. You know, the root word of intimacy is intimus. It means innermost or inmost. To be intimate with somebody is not necessarily sexual. It just means to let them see your insides. And there's a powerful moment right now where we get to let other people see our insides because we need them to, because we need to feel known and we need to feel connected. And we're not necessarily rushing to that point where, oh my God, can we have sex? Can we make this a real thing? Can I finally have like the Instagram photo of me, you on the beach so my friends can see that I'm in a relationship? Like, it's like, no, it's just we're doing human connection for the real reason why we need human connection. And it's because it's like oxygen and we need it. So I think that's, you know, on the subject of getting closer and cultivating intimacy and how we're using apps and all this stuff, I think that it's slowing us down and it's deepening us with ourselves and with others in a big way.
Are there specifics that you can speak to? We have a couple of people writing in, one person in Chicago who started a quarantine matchmaking service called Bay Chicago, I believe. Quarantine Bay Chicago. Mm-hmm. And another woman who teaches a course called Sex, Love, and Marriage in America at Brandeis. And both of them are asking about initiating new relationships and any advice on, as you said, being intimate in this new way, and a different kind of vulnerability. I like the way that you phrase that because we just have these visual cues in many ways. We don't have the smell, we don't have the touch, we don't have the taste, whatever other stimuli we used to get. Can you give some words, anybody give some words about what kind of advice you can give when you are laying yourself bare in just one realm, which is visual?
I'm happy to start if you want me to. I mean, I don't have a dating app, but I think that for starters, it's okay to acknowledge that this is awkward. That it's weird. This is the first time we've ever done something like this. Of course, it's my preferred method to meet somebody and share a coffee or a beverage or something and be able to see, you know, do we vibe? But I think it's okay initially to just be like, this is awkward and I don't know how to do this, and reminding yourself that the other person doesn't know how to do it either. You know, this is all of our first go at it. None of us are experts at figuring out how to date in quarantine. So I think giving yourself permission for it to be sort of weird. Talk about coronavirus if you feel like it, but I, in all my conversations with my friends and family, sort of like to acknowledge it and keep it moving. I don't want every conversation to be about that. So what makes you exciting and fun and interesting and something that you can connect with another person over that's a little different than other people? So, you know, we all like to meet people. We like our family, our friends, sunshine, things like that. But what makes you super unique? You know, what is really different about you? And maybe that's you like to do Ironmans, or you're a vegan, or whatever it is. But I would really talk about those things that make you different than everybody else. And I think that that's a really great place to start any conversation.
Lovely.
Yeah, I agree. And I would also just say, like, you know, a lot of people have reached out to me and been like, what do I wear for this first virtual date? Like, do I put makeup on? Things like that. And it's like, it's the same answer for a real date. Like, whatever makes you feel the most you and the most comfortable in your own skin is what you should do. So if that's, you know, putting on makeup, put on makeup. If that's not putting on makeup, don't put on makeup. If it's wearing sweatpants, maybe you wear sweatpants on real dates in real life, then wear sweatpants, you know? And it's so important to feel good when you're doing these virtual dates. And I know some guys who didn't want to do virtual dates because they haven't had a haircut, and you know, they've been eating a ton and whatever it is. And girls too, I'm sure. And it's like, well, you don't have to. No one's making you do these virtual dates, and you can pick up the phone and have a phone call too. It's not just, it's not like you have to do the thing that everyone else is doing. You can have a phone call relationship. And if you don't feel comfortable being virtual, just over communicate and explain why. And you'll be hopefully understood if it's the person for you.
And I would just add to that, Abby, that it's not just for dating, it's about nurturing the relationships you have as well. We've been quarantined, as everybody has, for 6 weeks. So last Saturday night, I said to my wife, let's go on a date. So I got in my nicer clothes. She put on a dress. We got in the car. We drove down the coast, then went to a Chinese restaurant takeout, ate in our car, and then went back home. And that was the entire date. It was about an hour, but it just felt good first to get out of the house and to just connect with one another and to just do something a little differently that wasn't about doing our work or cooking the dinner or doing this. It was about nurturing the relationship. And whether that's a first date virtually or with the people you are quarantined with, it's really important to feed those relationships in ways that lift one another up, because we can just get caught in this wheel of doing the same thing each and every day. I mean, my running joke is at 8:55 in the morning, I kiss her goodbye, I say, okay, honey, I'm going to work, and then I walk downstairs. You know, it's like there's no separation. And for me, when I come home from a long day, it's great to have a glass of wine with my wife and just sit. But we're sort of together all day long, so how do you do that? You really have to set time aside to do that in ways that are meaningful to your relationship and that will lift one another up.
And as a follow-up to that, Rabbi Rick, I wonder if you can speak to, somebody's asking, how can you balance your own needs with those of your partners for people that have been there together for a long time, but have never been together like this? Yeah. Especially when, you know, really what you need, or maybe I'm speaking too personally, but really what you need is some space, and there is no space.
Yeah, that's a great question. My mother said to me, I've been married to your father 63 years and I've never spent so much time with him. And I think the answer is twofold. One is you absolutely have to find space for yourself. I've been going on a lot of walks with my wife, but I've been doing a lot on my own as well, just to clear my head and just to breathe the fresh air and get some sunshine. But what I find helps me is when I can be kind to somebody else. And that's like really going into a place that even if I'm having a tough time, when I reach out to somebody I care about, particularly my spouse, it lifts me up as well. And it's a really tough balance, particularly if there's conflict. If one of the reasons you need space is because you're having challenges with the person with whom you're in a relationship, it's time to prioritize the things that are most important in this moment. Now, that priority list might change post-quarantine, but what do you need to survive in this moment? And if you have children in the home, that is focusing on the children. If you're in a good space in your relationship, then that's an easy win. If you're in a challenging space, then you need to just really decide what's most important, focus in on that, and then put the rest on the shelf until the next opportunity you have when the world changes again.
And maybe this is, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say to the rabbi, I'm surprised by how many people express to me that they are afraid to communicate to their partner or their children right now that they need space. And I mean, I'm Jewish. I never have a thought I don't say, so I just say it. But I'm surprised by how many people are frightened to communicate that to your partner. And I think it's such a normal thing. No one is supposed to be around other people this much. And it doesn't mean you don't love them, that you're not excited by them, that you're not sexually attracted to them. I get so many emails from women that are like, I've been hiding in the laundry room, pretending to do stuff because I just need a break. And it's like, just say that, grab a glass of wine, go outside by yourself, call your friends, come back in and you're refreshed.
So well said, Rayna. And the trick is how you say it.
Hmm.
If you say, I need space from you, the spouse is going to become completely defensive. If you say, I'm sure that you probably need space and I need a little space, I'll watch the kids for this hour, you watch them for the next hour, is a different way to frame it and shape it. And just as an aside, I find that people struggling the most right now are young parents who are working from home for the first time and trying to homeschool their children. I find their stress level to be beyond, the limit, and they're really, really having a challenge. And so figuring these things out, and as Rayna says, talk about them. I mean, that is the best way to sort of deal with them is, our stress is relieved almost by 80% if we just verbalize something to a non-judgmental person who's not going to get defensive. That's a gift you can give your spouse or your partner, the person with whom you're in a relationship. How are you feeling? And whatever you say, I'm just going to listen, and I'm not going to punch back or fight back or take it personally. I just want to hear where you're at. Those are easy wins for a relationship.
I have a question for the rabbi, since we have a rabbi here. It's interesting, the advice that we seem to give people in general is like, it comes down to communication and just speak what's on your mind. But since a critical mass of us find that challenging, myself included, it's obviously not that easy. So, I think it's probably important that we honor the and have reverence for the challenge of self-expression. And people are hiding in their laundry rooms because it is hard to speak your truth, and it is very hard to ask for what you want. And it's very easy, I guess, to say, yeah, just say it, everything's cool. But like, all of us have a tough time doing that, at least with somebody, and especially with somebody we consider to be our romantic partner. And so I guess beyond just saying, say it out loud, talk about it, like, what can we say to like validate the feelings of people who, like, that's not enough?
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Jared. I think you're spot on. It's hard to generalize on a webinar like this, but to be sure, each individual is an entity unto themselves. And that's why I began the whole call with, this is an existential moment. So if not communicating is a struggle for you, communicating is a struggle for you, now's the time to really think through what that means for you. Do you want to be a better communicator? How do you go about that? Do you like exactly who you are? And instead of communicating with your words, you're going to communicate with your kind actions towards your spouse. Because what we don't want, I think, is people stuck in the laundry room by themselves because they have no other options. And I guess I really believe that people are dynamic beings and our potential is endless, but everybody has a different goal and end. And I think we just have to decide for ourselves what that is. But I'm really sensitive to what you're saying here. For those for whom it comes easy, well, then what I said is a no-brainer. For those for whom it comes much more in a challenging way, then we have to navigate that. We have to ask for help. We have to go online and read. How does an anxious person who doesn't communicate well communicate that they're anxious? Well, that's what therapy is for. That's what your brother's for. That's what your best friend is for. And that's what this moment is about. I think we're all saying the same thing in a lot of ways, that now is the time to seize the moment. If you are trapped within yourself because you don't communicate well, now is the time to figure out and navigate your path so that you're to the place where you want to be. And that's why you have rabbis. That's why you have friends. That's why we have all these opportunities to really explore those. Short answer to my long explanation is there's always somebody to help guide us. And we just need to be a little bit vulnerable and just take one step towards that. Because I don't want people alone in their laundry room. That doesn't feel right to me, and my heart hurts when I hear that kind of a story. I don't know if that answers completely, but it's an attempt.
Muted.
Can you hear me now? There we go. There's a good question in relation to this from the opposite side, which is, how do I deal with quarantining away from my boyfriend with anxiety, depression, who is not communicating well during this time? And I'll piggyback by saying I have a dear friend who's quarantining with a partner who is extremely depressed and not communicating, unable to communicate it, but obviously very, very in need of professional help. So how do we take these distances that might not even be physical and really approach somebody who's having trouble communicating their pain?
I'll just say that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's a really important, depression and anxiety are no different than some other physical ailment you might have for which you would go to the doctor and not think twice about it. And we have a lot of shame around these challenges that we have, and we ought not to. We ought to talk about them openly and honestly. And if one's boyfriend or girlfriend or partner is depressed and anxious and exhibiting all those symptoms, they ought to get help. Every doctor I know, every therapist I know is doing teletherapy and telemedicine. There is help available. There's a hotline in every county. There's these amazing podcasts that lift up our spirits as well and give us great information. This is a medical issue, and we ought to get help for people who are really struggling, and we ought not to be ashamed about it. If we broke our arm, we go to the doctor without thinking about it. But if we have a broken heart due to depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder or whatever it might be, there's no shame in getting help for that. And help exists. Help exists. People get better from depression. People can get better from anxiety. People do not have to suffer in silence. And so the greatest mitzvah, good deed, somebody who's a partner or in a relationship can do is really encourage that person to get help.
And going to a lighter note, David, you talk a lot about the importance of pictures, and you had specific criteria, which I thought were very funny, about swiping, developing a rapport, and then meeting up. Obviously, we can't meet up right now. But what about, since we're seeing each other visually so much now, are there any tips you can give us in terms of Lindsey having her dad in the background, or a cat walking across the screen, or anything like that, that we can make ourselves more visually attractive?
Well, I think a couple of things. I forgot the context, but it was as it relates to working from home. And someone was saying, in reflecting on it, that it's been such a beautiful experience because it makes everyone so much more human. Right? Like you're on the phone with your boss or your team, who's usually polished, and usually, there's, different than when their cats are walking around or their kids are, coming in the video or whatever. And that's such a beautiful experience. I second, and echo the sentiment of being exactly who and as you are, being fully expressed and just like putting it out there. I think that if you can stand in your truth and share that powerfully, that you'll call in what's right and you'll filter out, what isn't, right for you. And then I think, two things that when you were in the earlier question about, I guess, tips for dating from home, that come to mind for me are, one is this idea of really, really getting clear on the why, on what is it you're doing. Is it, because, I remember, I don't know, I'm definitely like addicted to social media, and I'm on it too much for sure. But those times when I'm sitting in, not even in quarantine, but on a general Sunday, and I'm just sitting there and it's a peaceful moment, my reflex is to pull out my phone and open Instagram. And so are we, when we're going on that app, or we're doing whatever we're doing to have this date that where you're asking for tips and tricks on, I would want to zoom out and just examine the why. What is this coming up for me for? Why is it that am I just trying to fill this gap of feeling, you know, like right now I feel lonely or alone. And so therefore I want to, you know, like bring in, you know, time, space, people, conversation, et cetera, company. Is it for seeking, you know, partnership? Is it for just having fun with human connection because we're not really connecting otherwise? So really getting clear on the why. And then ideally, there's a piece of advice often given and very hard to follow, which is like I call it clearing space, which is like, let's say you're the person who says that, oh, I really want to find my, you know, big love. I want to find my person, but you're still texting your ex and like, you know, some other people once in a while or regularly, but like, it's clutter and it's taking up emotional, you know, heart space, head space, just taking energy. And this has been a really interesting time. And I heard just yesterday, someone said to me that like all of the people, like that they were taking this as an opportunity to clear space because it almost has to happen by default. Lots of these people you're clearing space from like aren't people you're like really putting time in, you know, investing in deepening with. It just, you know, more happens to be like, it, you know, easier, fun or casual or whatever. But because people aren't able to meet those people, I think that like this sort of space clearing is already happening. So examine the why, embrace the space, whether that's for yourself or for, you know, just taking time and space for yourself, or if it's to clear space to then call in what you're looking for. And then the last point is something that a comment earlier made me think about. One time my friend got engaged maybe 5 years ago, and I was like, wow, like, how did you know? And he's like, oh, well, you know, we just knew, but he had done some thinking before this last relationship where he realized that traditionally or previously, every relationship or every date or every encounter, there was always an expected outcome. Like we're like a low key. Ideally, I want to go on the first date so I can then go on a second so I can kiss you. Then eventually we can get into bed. Maybe then we're going to get serious. Then then maybe engage. Then kids. Whatever it is. There's always this subconscious or not, overt or subvert sort of continuum. And he said that in this relationship, we both practiced something he called no cherished outcome, which was that in every moment, just being in that moment without advancing or thinking about what was going to come next. And through that, as a result, they deepened and deepened and deepened to the point where it was just so clear that they were the people for each other. And so if anything, we don't know when we're going to be out of this. We don't know what it's going to be like afterwards. And because of all these unknowns, I feel like we could either, worry ourselves in circles with unknowns, or sort of embrace and celebrate the moment the best we can.
That's brilliant.
It's another's idea, but I'm happy to relay.
Brilliant.
That's really beautiful. And on a technical issue, somebody was asking, is JSwipe for men in their 50s or 60s?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's a tool for anyone to find connection. It started more, millennial oriented, but now we have a lot of people from all ages, and so yes.
Okay.
But I encourage them to try all things. Yeah.
And are there any? I know we're actually talking about staying in the moment. Are there any predictions or any trends that any of you see in terms of how relationships are changing? Or somebody's writing, what do you think that this is going to do for relationships after quarantine? And I wonder if anybody is trying even to make those kind of predictions.
I'll start if that's okay. I have been thinking about this a lot, and I think, ideally we come out of this and people are like, oh, I really need to, be more serious about relationships, and I need to, settle down and really find the person that is my person. But, I think in reality, people are going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been locked up in my house for 3 months. I need to go out and I need to, meet as many people as possible. And I think even if, right now someone might be really reflecting and thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I need to find one person and settle down with that person. I think, in reality, when we're all out of here, like, the people who wanted relationships will still want relationships, and the people who wanted to be single will still want to be single. You know, you can't really change how you feel and what you're ready for based on being inside for 3 months, in my opinion. I think, you know, everyone's just going to go back to what their original preferences are. I think the one thing that it has been good for is realizing if the relationship you're currently in has been good for you or not. That's my opinion.
Anybody else predictions?
I'm seeing a lot of people say, you know, I didn't know my partner. I didn't realize that they felt this way, positive and negative things. You know, I didn't realize how supportive my partner could be and strong, or I didn't realize how tone deaf and negative my partner is. And I think that we're all making a lot of decisions about our partners right now. And I think it's important to take all those decisions with a grain of salt and some kindness and understanding, because we are experiencing something that's unprecedented. And I wouldn't say it's unfair to make judgments about your partner based on this, but it's not fully fair, you know? And even things like saying, I don't know how to ask my partner for space, we're all learning how to do that now. And we're all learning the difference between things like, I need space from you versus the language that's just, I need space. And those are very different asks, I think. But I think that people just in general are becoming very shocked by their partner. And I think it's a time to just sort of reflect and have a little kindness and understanding for what other people are going through.
You know, there's a running joke that 9 months from now, there'll be 2 professions gainfully employed, divorce attorneys and OBGYNs. I you know, have no comment or prediction about whether that's true or not. What I do know, though, is to just try and practice small little things in your current circumstance. Like, one of my mantras is try and see the compliment in the complaint. Like, if somebody says to you before coronavirus, you know, you're never home for dinner. Well, what's the compliment in that complaint? The compliment is, I want to spend time with you. I need to be with you. I want to be with you. And when we're quarantined together, there may be a lot of complaints. And so somebody says, you didn't clean up the house. Well, that's a complaint, but maybe the compliment is, I want to live in a more tidy environment with you so that we can, you know, have more room to move around, or whatever it might be. You know, there's the theory of basic communication skills. Instead of saying, I love you, but you do all these things, you could say, I love you, and I really would appreciate if Once you say but, it ignores everything that came right before that. And small little things that we could practice while in quarantine that will really maybe change the trajectory of our relationship for the better. And there's a ton of stuff out there, like little tools to help your relationship grow. And you know, for the person who has a partner who's not willing to do that, they come to the conclusion, as Rayna said, maybe they're tone deaf. Maybe I'm learning about this partnership in ways that I didn't really know before. And so, but I think there's a positive way to spin this for yourself, and then hopefully your partner will join you in using these small little techniques and things that will help grow your relationship so that it'll be even better post-quarantine.
And can I ask a lightning round question in our last minute for everyone? If this is a time where we're all discovering new ways to love and new things to love, what is one thing that you've come to love just since quarantine started?
Cooking.
Cooking. Awesome.
Community comes in many ways and many forms.
I think I'm loving just figuring out new ways to push our business forward. Lindsey and I both sort of do the same thing. So just new ways to be creative and feel connected to our audience while we're all not connected.
Delicious. David, Jared?
Watching humanity adapt and innovate, you know, in absence of another option. Right? Like, we have to work from home. Okay, what are we going to do? Figure it out. We can't do Passover together. What are we going to do? Have it on Zoom. And like seeing just the quick iterations of people coming together and rapid, innovation is powerful. And also the sustained time to really get clear on how someone's doing. I mean, I came back to Miami, that's where I'm from, and I came here to help make sure my dad was going to take it as seriously as I thought he should be. And it made me so clear on how, on like a quick phone call or a check-in, even a FaceTime, like day to day, usually, how easy it is to sort of miss like what's really going on or how someone's really doing. And I've loved that opportunity to really, to be confronted with that.
Beautiful. Jared, anything?
Yeah. I think that, I've been able to cultivate some pretty wild connections with strangers from all over the world in the last 5 weeks in a way that I just wouldn't have been able to before, by moving our town hall online. It's been wild. And so, we've had thousands of people who have joined that. But then I started in the middle of March a daily check-in call. So at 6 p.m. Eastern, I started just logging in every night at 6 p.m. and we shared it with our mailing list. And there's like anywhere from 10 to 50 different people from all over the world who are logging in and sharing their stories and hanging with me for an hour. And so like yesterday we had a woman from Trinidad and Tobago and another person in Melbourne and another person in Berlin and people from across the United States. And so I think that it's been such a blessing. I feel like in this time I've made hundreds of new friends and I just feel really grateful for that.
Beautiful.
The next one is tonight, right?
Yeah, tonight. 7:30.
7:30. Okay. And please, everybody, do check out the chat to find out the links to Rayna's podcast, Lindsey's podcast, the book that we all co-wrote with Jared, and go to the forward and write questions about love or anything else to dearabbies@forward.com. And everyone will get a tape, nobody says that, a recording of this awesome discussion. And thank you all again for taking your time out to talk about this really essential questions.
Thank you, Abby, for having us. Thank you, Forward, for having this conversation and creating this space. And thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
moderator.
you.
Thanks, guys.